really good, so it wasn't. But if you just consider the numbers of higher seeds losing to lower seeds, it is surprising. According to the NCAA, Oregon's win over Iowa marked the 12th upset of the tournament, with upset defined as a win by a team seeded 5 spots lower than their opponent. The record for an entire tournament is 13. This tournament has 12, and we're still in the second round. You had maybe 15 other teams that could have an impact, and you're seeing that. There are a ton of good players and teams out there, even on lower seeded teams. So it's ultimately not surprising. You've got a lot of roiling going on right now. Never ever underestimate Syracuse and its head coach Jim Boeheim and the stifling zone defense he has his teams play. Syracuse is an 11 seed, and they've beaten 2 higher seeds and frustrated them with that defense, and the Orange are in the Sweet 16. Another takeaway, don't badmouth the Pac-12 this year, Audie, if you were planning on it. The much maligned conference has Oregon, Oregon State, USC, and UCLA still alive. And finally, here goes Loyola Chicago again. The team that made a surprise run to the Final Four in 2018 is back. They look really strong after thwacking number 1 seed Illinois. Also back is now 101-year-old longtime team chaplain Sister Jean, who is inspiring the Ramblers with her support and her pregame prayers.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton M. Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south. In the land of the free and the home of the brave on the beautiful March the 22nd, 2021. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it's been a little nerve-wracking around here for the past several days. We got spring break going on, and we got all these kids running around with no mask, no social distancing and everything, so it's a little worrisome going on. But once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They always got a mask and take care of even all the foolish people.
Even the foolish people need help. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Also, all around the world, say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV, or you'll be sitting there staring at a still picture. Man, I love pausing. I love pausing and praying, Big C. I'll never stop pausing, and I'll never stop pausing on our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help, Big C. Why should everybody care?
Well, Charlton, it is a total pandemic in this country of veteran suicides that we've been living through. We lose over 24 a day to suicide. I understand there's March Madness and all going on in the sports world, and people are preoccupied with that as well as the pandemic. But it's always been madness when it came to suicide amongst our American veterans, Charlton. This is something and a disease that we need to find a solution for. I know there's no vaccine that's on the horizon for suicide in America, Charlton. It has to become a concerted effort amongst all citizens to pay attention to these veterans, try to find out what their needs and concerns are. And if you open up dialogue with them, maybe you can steer them in a different direction.
Yep.
We give them the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton, but we need to make it a priority amongst Americans to stem veterans away from suicide.
Very well said. I love it. That number, Big C, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. BigC.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the home run king Barry Bonds. When you reach out to them, just tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this great country, putting people back to work, just like McDonald's did it. Also, car dealerships do it, sports teams are doing it, watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. Also, I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe, just like God said it. Let there be light. Open your cell phones and just say it. Play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps pop up from anywhere in the world, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Big C, man, there's so much going on. People talk about March Madness, and I know we love the sports world, and sometimes people are just plain mad, Big C, but I always, I hate when bad things happen in life. I know we do sports and news, but I know there's been another tragedy in the United States of America. Big C, your thoughts?
Yes, it has, Charlton. In the city of Boulder, Colorado, you have a insane person walking into a grocery store where people are shopping to buy sustenance for their families and opened fire on an innocent crowd once again, Charlton. It's been a much of madness in this country, since the last administration telling people to take back their country. And you go ahead and once again, Charlton, we're having a mass shooting scene in a major city in America by someone who figures that they can just go in and have autonomy doing these things.
Yes, it's a shame. I do love offering our thoughts and prayers. We don't want to be insensitive and pretend like it never happened. That's why we love telling people, so they can just keep an eye on yourself and your loved ones and always know your surroundings as much as humanly possible. Hopefully, everything will get better soon. Thoughts and prayers with everybody who suffered a tragedy. Big C, I want to bounce the basketball after offering our thoughts and prayers to some of the insanity of the rule madness that's going on in this country. But I want to bring it back to something that I can be hopefully very proud of, and people can be proud of also. Black History Month is over, according to the people who created out of Rome the Bible, and also the calendar. But we have our own form of Black history. We call it Daily Black Sports History. We're inspired by the endeavors of these less celebrated African American athletes. Big C, every pro sports team's Jackie Robinson, May 20th, 1949. Big C, when you think about this, Don Newcombe makes his first major league start for the Brooklyn Dodgers. The Brooklyn Dodgers were doing a lot of things back in the 49. Now you have the Brooklyn Nets doing their thing in 2021. But Don Newcombe, Big C, he was the first African American pitcher to dominate big league batters and the first Cy Young Award winner. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when we think about giving African American athletes an opportunity in the 40s, Charlton, this is one of the things that a lot of white athletes and owners feared, is that they would step into that professional sport and become dominant figures overnight, Charlton.
Not only overnight, Big C, it is something that I always keep up, the idea that whenever someone achieves something, some people do it with a silver spoon in their mouth, Big C, and some people do it in Jim Crow. And when you do it in Jim Crow, it's not having that silver spoon in your mouth. And that's always important. People go under pressure. People deal with the stress. We saw the garbage that happened today up in Colorado. And people have dealt with that kind of oppression all the time. So imagine having that fear when you leave the baseball diamond that it could have happened to them or their families. So that's what I appreciate about the great Don Newcombe, Big C. Newcombe, like many Dodgers teammates, Big C, Jackie Robinson was signed by Branch Rickey from the Negro Leagues and went on to make a huge mark in the Major Leagues, Big C. Newcombe joined the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1949. So people look at Kevin Durant and James Harden saying they're just trying to get a super team. Well, Newcombe did his thing way back in the day in 49, Big C. 1949, winning 17 games en route to a Rookie of the Year award as he helped lead the team in the National League pennant. His pitching career was interrupted by military service, Big C, for 2 years when he served in the Korean in 1952 and 1953, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, see, that's the thing that white people don't understand, Charlton, when they don't realize how much black people have served this country during all the wars that have ever occurred. They've sacrificed their professional careers and went and fought for a country that would not respect them or give them the same amount of latitude that they were, enjoying in life on the street.
Yeah.
You talk about Don Newcombe coming from the Negro Leagues, becoming Rookie of the Year in the National League, Charlton. You talk about the fear of being off the mound, Charlton, and in the private sector, that his life was in peril. These black athletes, their life were in peril
all the time
when they were playing. No one, they didn't have protection in the stadium to protect them against some yahoo that, like in Boulder, Colorado today, felt that he wanted to make an impression on the rest of white society by taking one of these black athletes out.
You know that the FBI said that white supremacy is the most imminent threat to our freedom in the United States, and the past administration knew that because he's also part of that Confederacy. But just thinking about Don Newcombe, Big C, what he did, a lot of men had that same fear when they were out of the ballparks, out of the football stadiums, out of the basketball arenas, out of the baseball diamonds. He returned to the Dodgers in 1954, Big C. 2 years later, he won the Cy Young Award, and he was also named National League MVP. And Big C, he did it in Jim Crow, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about it as a black fan back in those days, Charlton, a person sitting at home listening to a game over the radio. Black citizens in America were not allowed to go out in the street and celebrate when a black athlete performed these great feats on the playing surfaces, Charlton, because they were in fear of their lives. They could have been shot. They could have been hung, because white people would have felt that, hey, you're trying to belittle us and make us seem less than you, and we'll make an example out of you. But it shows the power of the black athlete to be able to perform under such pressure, Charlton. When, you go off and fight in war, and you come back and you're still a dominant individual in the game that you play.
In the game that you play. And it's not about all society, all white society, but there's enough that was pigeonholed for black Americans. So anyone that talks about, oh, this guy's the GOAT, Tom Brady's the GOAT, Tom Brady never worried about being lynched. He never had to worry about his family being assassinated just because he was setting records, winning Super Bowls. A lot of black men had to deal with that. He was a 4-time All-Star, won 20 games 3 different times. The great Newcombe, Big C, Robinson, and catcher Roy Campanella, they were a trio of African-American stars for the team that says to win championships where they go, the Dodgers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about this team, the Dodgers, Charlton, that you have 3 African-Americans on the team at that time during Jim Crow in America. They had that internal support for each other, Charlton. They could look at each other's back. They had someone to room with on the road, so they were not always left alone. They could eat together, Charlton.
Yeah.
So you think about how difficult it was just to survive as a black athlete in the 40s and early 50s in America, but they had that support of teammates, Charlton, to help them out.
Yeah, the great Eddie Murphy did a movie called Trading Places, and no one wanted to trade places with those great athletes back in the day. Newcombe played on 3 pennant winners, Big C, with the Dodgers and the World Series champions in 1955, the year they finally beat the Yankees. The Yankees don't win that game, Big C, and he remained with the Dodgers until 1958, and then ended his career with stints in Cincinnati, Ohio, also Cleveland, Ohio, and Big C, he did that in Jim Crow. Big C, your thoughts?
He did it, Charlton, but it showed the greatness. What I appreciate about Don Newcombe is that this is a man who did not kowtow to anybody, Charlton. He came into professional baseball as a major league and held his head high and dominated the game. He went off and served a tour duty in the military, Charlton. He went and fought for a country that did not respect him as a man on the street.
Yep.
And then he came back again into Major League Baseball and dominated once again like he had never left. It shows the mental and physical power of black people when they put their minds to something.
Yeah, it's all about trying to help each other and realizing they caught a lot of hell from mainstream, and then sometimes people keep acting like they're mainstream. It's all fair and love and war, but the great Don Newcombe did so much for himself and this country, and he did it in Jim Crow. Big C, I want to jump to the world of the NFL. even Patrick Mahomes is up on the non-blankety-blank tokens, or NFTs is what they're called, non-fungible tokens. Kansas City Chiefs quarterback reportedly sold $3.4 million worth of NFTs on Wednesday, just days after tight end Rob Gronkowski sold nearly $2 million worth of his own, Big C. And there's a Darrell Revel of the auction network, Big C. A lot of people, they want to go out and pawn different things or sell different things. After selling $3.4 million worth of NFTs on Wednesday night, Patrick Mahomes is 1-for-1 on NFTs sold tonight for $246,619.98. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you talk about small numbers like that to an individual like Patrick Mahomes, Charlton,
yeah,
here's a guy with a $500 million contract.
Yeah,
I mean that's pocket money.
Yeah, it's pocket money, but that's why it's good to have pockets. If you got $200,000 in your pocket, it's all fair level. Where the original sale, it was reported that Mahomes put 6 different works of art up for sale on digital art sites of Maker's Palace, Big C, and 4 of them were open editions ranging from, I think, $2,500 up to $10,000, and Mahomes sold as many as that could be purchased in 15 minutes. At that time frame, 451 were bought, and $2 million was gross. So somebody has some deep pockets. And when you think about Mahomes, who signed a 10-year, $450 million contract, Big C, and I hear he did it in nickels and dimes with the extension of the Chiefs, that kicks it for the 2022 season. It's a bit of extra walking around cash in his NFT sale. That's good for him in his pockets, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you look at the people who make these purchases, Charlton, they're looking at investment.
Yeah.
And when we see what the price of these NFL rookie cards are going for nowadays, Charlton, and NBA rookie cards, I mean, millions of dollars that cars are being sold for. If you buy memorabilia of Patrick Mahomes, Charlton, who knows what it's going to be worth in 10 to 15 years down the road.
Yeah, nobody knows. It's like Bitcoin. If only people knew, they wouldn't have said all that Bitcoin, that's just garbage. It's all fair at level more, Big C. Speaking of things going up in value in NFL quarterbacks, there are a couple more details of the long-awaited Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff trade that trickled out since the trade became official. And I believe Stafford grew up down in Westlake High School down in Texas. And then also Goff went to Marin Catholic over in California in the Bay Area. But a lot of it became official yesterday. And just think about this, Big C. One is that the Rams, not the Lions, paid the $2.5 million roster bonus that Goff was owed. So why did the Rams pay the extra bonus, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it was in the contract, and I think the Rams told them, hey, you're going to have to eat that part. If you recall, a year ago, they had that same type of scenario with Clay Matthews and Todd Gurley, that the Rams had roster bonuses in their contracts when they parted ways, and I know that both of those players had to end up suing to get their money.
Yeah, they had to sue and get their money, Big C. The bonus became official when Goff was on the roster the second day of the league year, and that's why the trade didn't become official until Thursday, which is the second day of the league year, and the Rams paid Goff's roster bonus just before making the trade official. They got rid of Todd Gurley. They didn't pay Gurley's bonus before they got rid of him, the Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it was like, we don't want you, we don't want to pay you to Todd Gurley, but, the NFL, because of the deadline, for set up for trades to become official, Charlton, it left him on the Rams roster, and so the Rams are actually responsible for that. If the trade had been void, they'd have been responsible for his whole contract.
Yeah, would have been responsible for his whole contract. It's all fair and level word. Big C, I want to bounce the ball around to one shining moment. I'm telling you, there's a lot of shining moments going on in the world of NCAA basketball. And in the words of the Pac-12, you like that? You like that? The Pac-12 doing its thing. It's like what football has been talking about over the years. If you leave an outsider's opinion to who the better team is, and they don't get to earn it on the floor or on the field, then it's just an outsider, good old boy collusion, shenanigans, whatever you want to call it. But the Pac-12, they've really been doing their thing on the basketball court. One of the most maligned leagues for whatever reason comes out of one of the most populated regions in the country, primarily California and all along the West Coast. So really appreciate that the Pac-12 is undefeated so far in NCAA March Madness. It is madness at times. But college basketball, South Carolina's Don Staley, Big C, blast the NCAA after organization's apology on several issues. And the quote was that we know where the NCAA is, and we know how they stood all along messaging about togetherness and equality, and it's about convenience and sound bites, Big C, for the moment, created after the George Floyd murder. And then Stanley wrote in the lengthy statement, quote, we cannot, as young leaders, women allowed NCAA President Mark Emmert and his team to use us, our student athletes, at their convenience. All teams here deal with the same issues as the men's teams this season, and yet their reward is a little bit different. We all know it's different, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a whole lot different. You can see how that they've discriminated against the women's teams during March Madness, Charlton, not allowing them to have access to proper facilities during their tournaments. They didn't have workout facilities, Charlton, that were adequate for the players, which is wrong. They have to condition themselves just like the male players do. I know Dick's Sporting Goods stepped up and donated workout equipment, Charlton, for all the female teams so that they could get their strength training in. But this is something that should have been the responsibility of the NCAA and Mark Emmert.
Yeah, you would think, Big C, but sometimes we always hear in life, you have not because you ask not. Always believe in asking, and then if you don't get what you want, then take it to the next level, if that makes sense. I want to touch on the one shining moment on the men's side. When you think about, do you believe in miracles? Well, how about this? I don't want to plagiarize. Do you believe in the miracle universe? It's all fair and left word, Big C. The great Oral Roberts owns a piece of NCAA history with an incredible Sweet 16 run led by the dynamic duo. Remember the dynamic duo in Batman and Robin? Big C, this duo was a little bit different. The dynamic duo of Kevin Albnor, Big C, sophomore guard Max Abers, and Oral Roberts stunned. I don't think they stunned him. They just beat him. But they stunned college basketball establishment for the second straight game on Friday, Big C. The Golden Eagles, they stunned number 2 seed, the Ohio State Buckeyes, to become the 9th team in NCAA history to pull a number 15 versus number 2 upset. Big C, your thoughts?
And that's what March Madness is all about. Everybody's always Cinderella hunting when it comes to March Madness.
Yeah.
You're looking for those teams that are double-digit seeded, and you're always pulling for those. Those are the teams that make basketball exciting. When you look at that, it's always the big boys that show up.
Yep.
But when it's the little engine that could, just back to the kids' storybook, Charlton, and that's what college basketball is about.
Yeah.
It's about the kids playing and having fun, and the kids at Oral Roberts are doing that.
Yeah, they're doing that. It's a great Eddie Murphy said in the movie, I think it was Beverly Hills Cop, he said, is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Harris Club this morning? Yeah, Oral Roberts, they wrecked the buffet at the Herald Club this morning, which had not won an NCAA tournament game. Big C, it was 1974. That's when the Steelers were in between winning the Super Bowls, Big C. They erased a double-digit second-half deficit Sunday to outlast the Florida Gators 81-78. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I think in 1974, Charlton, they did not have high-definition television. So that game would have been kind of blurry on television. But you think about the accomplishments of the young men that are playing now versus 1974.
Yeah.
A long, long time ago, Charlton. And none of these players would know anything about that history because they weren't around at that time.
Yeah.
And they're making history for themselves.
Yeah. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Herald Club this morning? That's one of my favorite scenes in Beverly Hills Cop. And Eddie Murphy was telling Taggart and Billy, and he was saying, well, he said, whisper. He said, you think the old man can hear us from the other side of the room? They said, yes, he can. It's all fair in level one. Back to one shining moment, Big C, college basketball. When you think about Buddy Boeheim, he takes a star turn, Big C. Led the Syracuse upset of West Virginia into the Sweet 16. They used to play in the same conference back in the day. Syracuse vaunted 2-3 zone, did the dirty work against the number 3 seed West Virginia Mountaineers. But when the Mountaineers shooters woke up in the second half, Big C, it was Boeheim. He responded with 3-point shooting clinics. I thought it was Dollar Dame out there, or Steph Curry out there shooting threes, Big C, to lead the 11th-seeded Orangemen to a 75-72 victory into the Sweet 16. It was an amazing performance, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about being a proud papa, and that's head coach Jim Boeheim, to have his son go out there and put on a shooting clinic. Often, you think about players being on their father's team, and you think about nepotism and them not having the ability to play. They're just on there with a scholarship because of the dad. But, in this situation, that's not founded. You're seeing a great athlete going out and performing on the biggest stage, and prime time wasn't too big for him, and the Orange Men are moving on.
The Orange Men are moving on. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Harrah Club this morning behind the son of Hall of Fame head coach Jim Boeheim? He led the way with 25 points while connecting on 6 of 13 for 3 points Big C attempts. And the effort also followed up a 30-point performance on Friday's opening round. They call it an upset of number 6 seed San Diego State, but when you look at the lineage and the examples of players that come out of Syracuse, I think maybe the best coming out of Syracuse will be Carmelo Anthony from back in the day. It's hardly called an upset when Syracuse beats anybody, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that has a legacy in the NCAA tournament, formerly part of the Big East. Charleston, they've always had a great program playing up there in the Carrier Dome up there in Syracuse.
Yep.
And Boeheim, his historical 2-3 zone defense has stifled many college programs.
Yeah, it has stifled many college programs. I mean, I love watching March Madness. I haven't really seen a lot of college basketball over the past year. I would just record things and then watch it on SportsCenter. But I love appreciating when I see good games. I want to give a shout out to the great Bill Walton, the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Lou Alcindor, Russell Westbrook, Reggie Miller. A lot of good old boys that played in UCLA. Fight that powder blue. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Harrah Club this morning? Well, Big C, this is why you don't invite Bruins into a feast, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, I mean, every dog has his thing, as they say in the world of sports. I mean, when you look at how well the Pac-12 has played in the NC tournament, Charleston, getting teams into the Sweet 16, I guess that's what they're going to need in football to expand college football out to 64-game playoffs so that they can get some teams in.
The only thing about this is they allowed them to do it on the floor. It's all fair level. Now you see why they keep the Pac-12 out of football playoffs, Big C. College basketball, UCLA fight. Abilene Christian, another unlikely matchup in today's NCAAs. On one side, UCLA blew them out by 20 points. I know a lot of people may not have seen the game, so I don't want to give out too much about it. But UCLA fight, Big C. On one side is mighty UCLA, college basketball royalty, Big C. On the other end is tiny Abilene Christian. Not tiny in the eyes of Texas. They beat Texas and their fights on the eyes of Texas, Big C. When you think about it, it's tiny Abilene Christian, an NCAA novice, a perfect matchup for an NCAA tournament full of March Madness. But something about UCLA, this team that lost 4 in a row going into March Madness in the Pac-12, they found a little bit easier competition when they got invited to the Big Dance, Big C. It is the 6th time that they have been in 11 versus number 14 contest since the field expanded back in to 64 teams. That was back in 1985, Big C. The previous one happened in 2015, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charleston, I mean, when you look at the status of the tournament, it's about being hot. It's about being, having the mismatches. And that's what it comes down to as we looked at the Syracuse game prior to this. If you got a guy that can knock it down from 3, Charleston, you can compete with anybody during the tournament run.
Yeah, you can really compete with anybody. So a lot of good basketball being played, especially from the West Coast, with Colorado and USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Oregon State knocking out the Cowboys. I'm 40, I'm a man. Well, it's hard that a Cowboy can't beat a Beaver. What's the world coming to when a Cowboy can't beat a Beaver?
Well, they don't swim as well as the Beavers do, Charleston. They stay in the water and can hold their breath a lot longer than a Cowboy can.
Those Beavers are a lot smarter than people give credit for. Off for 11 war. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet? Is this the Beaver who wrecked the buffet at the Harrah Club this morning? It's all for 11 war. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. When we come back, we're going to talk more about those one shining moments, NBA style. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we are back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, I wanna find the NBA basketball franchise that used to be hot like a rocket, Big C. Houston Rockets, they extend the team record losing streak to 20 games. I don't think they get an award for it, but mired in a long losing streak, the Houston Rockets, they twice put the ball in John Wall's hands in the waning moments. No luck once again. The Rockets ended think about this, Big C, their team record losing streak of 20 games. They fell to the Oklahoma City Thunder by the score of 114 to 112, and that was Sunday when Wall missed 2 shots in the final 10 seconds. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I guess you can't call him a clutch shooter after that, Charlton, but when you think about an NBA team waddling in a 20-game losing streak, he's a professional man. At some point, you got to reach in your back pocket and see if there's any pride in that, Charlton, and pull it out. But, I mean, here's a team that, they've lost 20 consecutive games. You're looking at the trade deadline coming up. I don't think that Victor Oladipo will be with the team, and this losing streak, who knows when it's going to end.
Yeah, they really, you can tell when guys don't want to be with a team, they decide they want to miss all the baskets they can take us off fair level war. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Hera Club this morning? The great Luka Doncic scored 37 points. Big C dropped 37 in 3 quarters, leading the Dallas Mavericks to a 132-92 rout of the Portland Trail Blazers on Sunday night. Doncic made his first 8 3-point shots. He made his first 8, Big C, and he was 8 for 9 shooting from long distance. Overall, he shot 13 of 19 from the field. He added 7 rebounds. He dropped 4. Think about this. He grabbed 4 assists, passing the ball out. He was shooting 8 of 9 from 3, but he still decided to get 4 or 6. Big C, the great Josh Richardson scored 21 points, and Darian Finney added 13, and Kristaps Porzingis added 12 for the Mavericks. 8 of 9 hasn't ever been done before, Big C. In 3 quarters, Big C, your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, it's been done, but he was in Dame's house telling Dollar Dame this is how you play the game. I mean, the consistency of Luka Doncic since coming back from that early season injury, Charlton. I know he's not talked about in the MVP race as things are stacking up, but if you look at him, how he has played the last couple of weeks prior to the All-Star contest, and since the Dallas Mavericks has come out of that, he's been one of the top 3 or 4 players in the league.
Yeah, he really has been doing his thing. And that Euro step is a thing to write home about. Dollar Dame got him the night before. McCollum got him the night before, Big C. But then they had a redo, and sometimes it's hard to do the second time around, all fair level war. Speaking of more NBA action in the universe, Big C, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton both had 26 points. Chris Paul had a triple-double with 11 points, 13 assists, and 10 rebounds. And the Phoenix Suns, they turned up the heat on the Lakers, but the Lakers are missing a lot of guys. LeBron injured his ankle. Anthony Davis is out. It was a 111-94 win Sunday night, and maybe, just maybe, they turned up the heat too much, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if you put too much heat on the lake, the water will dry up, Charlton. That looks like what the Lakers are doing right now, is that they're drying up. I mean, Anthony Davis, who knows how long he's going to be out. He's had an injury-plagued career, and this season is no different. And then LeBron James is going to miss critical time just like he did 3 years ago when he came over to the Lakers. This is going to put the Lakers in a tailspin, Charlton. They're going to be lucky to be higher than a 7 or 8 seed if they make the playoffs.
Yeah, it's amazing when you think about that young cast down there with Ayton and Booker, and then Chris Paul's not a young man, but he sure doesn't mind teaching young men how to play good basketball. And I know people are high on the Utah Jazz out west, Big C, and the Lakers also, and maybe even the Clippers. But when you have players that get injured, and you realize an older man has a harder time keeping up with a lot of young boys, and they have a lot of young men down in Phoenix, and they're turning up the heat on those older men. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but where's the older men in Los Angeles? I mean, that's a pretty young roster with LeBron James not being in the lineup. I don't think you have anybody over 30 in the lineup for the Lakers. So, I mean, this is just better talent that you have down in Phoenix than what you have in Los Angeles. Yeah,
sometimes you get used to getting paid to look around and watch the king do his thing, and now it's your time to shine, and sometimes it's hard to play when the heat's turned up on you. Speaking of turning up the heat, is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Hera Club this morning? That's one of the best lines in the Beverly Hills Cop. Colin Sexton, Big C, scored 23 of his 36 points in the second half, Big C. Jared Allen dropped 17 points and 15 rebounds. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat Toronto 116-105 on Sunday night, and they handed the Raptors their 8th straight loss. This is not the team that won the NBA titles a couple years ago, Big C. Your thoughts?
You know, what a difference a couple of years makes, Charlton, as you see the Raptors sliding. And I think the biggest problem with the Raptors is that they're not able to play at home this year.
Yeah.
They're stuck down in Florida, so they're still in the bubble mentality-wise, Charlton. And that weighs on players. You know, when you can't go back and have the comfort of your own bed, be around friends and family, and you're stuck, you know, away from home. And I think that's part of that dismal season that they're having this year.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes if you look at Tampa, they've had the Lightning get with the NHL. They were doing their things in the NHL, you know, chase for a Stanley Cup. And then you had the Tampa Bay Rays, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so maybe if they just change their name to the Tampa Raptors, would you ever see a Raptor down in Tampa? Big C, those Buccaneers were trying to eat it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I don't think that they're ever going to migrate down south out of Canada. I mean, the fanfare that they have there in Toronto was second to none in the NBA. You think about a team that's had a home game sellout in every game of their existence.
Yeah.
No other NBA team has been able to accomplish that.
Yeah, especially Jurassic Park is amazing. Dean Wade scored 15 points. Darius Garland had 15 points, 6 assists. And Cleveland, think about this, which had dropped 5 of its previous 6 games. Sexton's three-pointer gave the Cavaliers their largest lead at 97-75 early in the fourth. It's amazing. NBA is so aggressive and it's so talented. It's amazing that you have teams having leads of 20-plus points. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Sexton was excited about Alabama being, you know, in the NCAA tournament and have a high seeding, so he was showing his alumni that he can still play in the NBA.
Yeah, he was trying to show the thing. You know, Stanford beat Alabama earlier in a basketball game. Stanford did not make the NCAA men's tournament. Shows you how weak the tournament competition is in the SEC. Teams from the Pac-12 couldn't even get in, and they actually beat the SEC champ in Alabama. But it's all fan-level war. I just really hope that all of the moments of March Madness and, you know, the health department's doing their thing, but there was a university that was out because they had the COVID and they couldn't play, so Oregon got the chance to advance before they beat Iowa. But, you know, we only had one team affected so far, Big C. I hope that they can really keep a good grasp on that. I know they're all trying to do their thing in the bubble. I want to touch on another NBA story because sometimes you need a little time off. Another former All-Star made his debut in Brooklyn, Big C. You know, we talked about back in the day with Brooklyn winning the pennant over the Yankees, Big C. But Brooklyn, where a pair of current All-Stars helped carry the Nets to another victory. The great Kyrie Irving dropped 28 points. The great James Harden, he had 26 to lead the Nets to a 113-106 victory over the Washington Wizards on Sunday. But Big C, the great jumping over cars, Blake Griffin, he dunked for the first time, at least on television, since 2019 in the Brooklyn Nets debut. And the Brooklyn Nets, when you think about it, Nicholas Claxton, Big C, added 16 points, including 2 3-point plays down the stretch. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about how far players fall, Charlton, from an NBA dunk contest winner, Rookie of the Year, to not having a dunk in the NBA in a couple years, Charlton. And Blake Griffin seemed to struggle to get up on that dunk. But, you know, the Jersey Nets, the Brooklyn Nets have remained hot, you know, in their current winning streak, Charlton. But, you know, they're going to lose Kyrie Irving for a few games. Yeah. And if they lose, you know, if they continue to win during this absence of Kyrie Irving, you have to vote James Harden the MVP of the league.
Yeah, I think as far as James Harden being MVP and, again, starting for 2 teams in the same season, that's the thing that would make me elevate him maybe over LeBron James and maybe even over Joel Embiid. Harden did it by having to leave one city and going to a new city, a new team, learn a new system, and then playing with all-stars. And to play with all-stars and to still perform at the level he's doing, he went to a team that had all-stars that were just as good as him. It's not like he came and he was a king of the block. He came into a situation where he had to compete against 2 all-stars, and he's still doing his thing. The great Russell Westbrook, Big C, he had 29 points, 13 rebounds, and 13 assists for Washington. He was also doing his thing, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Westbrook is just a triple-double machine. It doesn't make a difference who he's playing against. Former teammate in Harden, they played on 2 teams together, and, you know, now that he's in Washington with Bradley Beal, Charlton, he's still firing it up. But when you look at James Harden coming to New Jersey, he's only on team in paper with 2 all-stars. I mean, when you think about Kevin Durant, he hasn't been there for the last 20 games. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what Harden has done has been, without Durant. Kyrie Irving hasn't been there every game either. Since James Harden's acquisition with the Nets, Charlton, he's played more games than Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant.
Yeah, he's doing his thing. I mean, I really, to move in mid-season, learn a new system, new coach, new teammates, new area to live. I mean, it's all fair and level where Harden definitely doing his thing. Artesia High School's finest out of Southern California. Big C. The great Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson each scored 30 points, and the New Orleans Pelicans overcome a triple-double by Nikola Jokic to beat the Denver Nuggets 113-108 on Sunday. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what New Orleans needs. They need help for, Zion Williams. He's going to get you 25 points in the paint every night, Charlton. It's just a matter who can step up amongst those young guys down in New Orleans. Can Van Gundy get them to play more consistent basketball? Because right now they're on the outside of the playoffs looking in, and Denver's going to be playing in the playoffs.
Yeah, they're going to be playing in the playoffs. The great Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Big C, added 20 points for the Pelicans, not the Pelicans in Scarface. In Scarface, they had the great Scarface movie back in the day, Tony Montana, Big C. But 20 points for the Pelicans, who won the final of a road trip after dropping their first 2 road games in Portland, Big C. It's a pretty impressive feat, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you got to get going in the NBA. We know that if it's abbreviated season, Charlton, you're going to get a lot of back-to-back games. And it's those young teams that are going to perform well in these back-to-back games. The older teams' players are accustomed to getting days off, not playing full games, and these younger players have a little more juice in the tank.
Yeah, they have a little bit more juice in the tank, and sometimes when you're a young player, it's not the kind of juice you put in a baby's bottle. It's the real kind of juice that you got to have. You got to be 21. Last time I just said you got to be 21 to have the kind of juice that these NBA basketball players want to put in the tank. I also want to, wish the best for LaMelo Ball. I think he had a broken wrist or a broken hand. I was just looking at a little bit of information about it. Maybe out for the whole season, Big C. Steph Curry had that same type of injury a couple of years ago and kept him out. He had to miss a whole year behind it. So I wish that young man nothing but the best. Tonight, Big C, NBA schedule for March 22nd in the NBA universe. Big C style, going to run down the schedule. Big C, get your thoughts on a couple of games. Sacramento's at Cleveland, already underway. Oklahoma City at Minnesota. Charlotte is at San Antonio. And then you have Utah. They're at Chicago. But this Utah team, if I'm just looking, now LeBron James is out, they say it may be a month. Anthony Davis is out. Can't look at the Lakers being the number 1 seed right now. Who knows what happens in the playoffs. I'm looking at maybe Phoenix still, even though they leaked a little bit of oil last week. But it's hard for me to say that Utah's the best team just based on the way that the Phoenix Suns are younger and they tend to turn up the heat a little bit more. Big C, your thoughts?
Yeah, but the length and experience that you have up there in Denver, Charlton, in Utah, is what's gotten them to be number 1. I mean, they got healthy this year. They got some guys back that they lost last season, which made a difference. And that size in the lineup is hard to defend. They have a great three-point shooting team when they're hot.
Yeah, when they're hot, Big C. We also have Toronto at Houston. Boston's at Memphis. Indiana's at Milwaukee. That's a big game for Milwaukee. But I want to take you to Atlanta at the L.A. Clippers. And LeBron James was injured in this series against the Atlanta Hawks. I don't think it was intentional. Sometimes people are rolling for balls, and LeBron got rolled up under. But this Atlanta team, since they brought in the new coach, Big C, before the All-Star break, McMillan, they've been doing their thing. And it's not a given that the Clippers can get them tonight, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's not a given that the Clippers can get anybody, Charlton. I mean, Atlanta's been hot. 8 consecutive games. They've gone on this West Coast road swing. I know they have in total of 8 road games that they're going to play. But we haven't seen the Clippers play inspiring basketball at any time on a lengthy basis, Charlton.
Yeah.
Atlanta's just been playing well under McMillan. He's gotten the team motivated.
Yep, he's got the team motivated. And I'm telling you, those dirty birds can fly. They don't want to have their wings clipped in L.A. It's all fair and level war. I want to just throw a little quiz. There's a little quiz, Alex Trebek style, Big C. NFL, a man retired 29 years ago today from the NFL and undoubtedly left behind the greatest sports legacy of all time. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's true. When you think about the man who took Sunday away from God, he did that. Pete Rozelle resigned from the NFL 29 years ago today. He's left the greatest legacy of any sports league. I mean, the only guy that would be close to him would be Adam Silver, not Adam Silver, but the previous commissioner of the NBA.
Yeah.
But when you think about what Pete Rozelle did, Charlton, he added Monday Night Football. He just came up with an idea. He said, what about us playing football on Monday?
Yeah.
We already took Sunday from God.
Yeah.
What about we own Monday night also?
Yeah.
And you think about the expansion. Pete Rozelle was around as the commissioner of the NFL when the Super Bowl started.
Yeah.
And there's been 2 commissioners in the NFL since Pete Rozelle. But, when you think about his legacy, him, was the initiator of free agency in the league, Charlton. He oversaw all of that.
Yeah.
And the expansion of the NFL, the bidding wars between the networks, and to make it the greatest sports property in the world. Pete Rozelle did all that. So when you want to talk about a man with a legacy in sports,
Yeah.
and the NBA commissioner I was talking about was David Stern. This guy would be second to what Pete Rozelle has done, making his sport the greatest sport that any fan wants to be a part of.
Yeah, you can say maybe arguably the greatest commissioner in the history of the universe. It's all fair and love and war. And speaking of the great Pete Rozelle, Big C, you passed the test. NFL football. The great Juju Smith-Schuster turned down the Baltimore Ravens and the Chiefs. That's amazing. 2 teams that are considered at the maybe top 3 teams in the AFC, or at least 4 teams. But the Steelers have, again, they did start 11-0 last year, but they did fall off a little bit. But Juju Smith-Schuster turning down the Ravens and Chiefs. The star could have teamed up with the great touchdown Patrick Mahomes and also Superman Jackson, both former MVPs, Big C. But he decided to go to the Wizard of Oz, and like Dorothy, he said there's no place like home, Big C. Your thoughts?
I think Juju Smith-Schuster looked out on the horizon, Charlton, and other teams also figuring out that he wasn't a number 1 receiver, that he was only a 2 or a 3. Because when you look at his numbers, they've never been the same since Antonio Brown left. Antonio Brown was in Pittsburgh, and he was one of the best receivers in the league. After Antonio Brown left the Steelers, he sort of fell off a little bit, even though he had great numbers, Charlton.
Yeah.
And he didn't know if he could go to another team and try to carry that mantra as a number 1 receiver, and he knew he would be safe and welcome if he came back to Pittsburgh.
He knew he'd be safe and welcome. And sometimes there's no place like home you want to go where people know your name. But he said he couldn't say enough about Pittsburgh. He loves Pittsburgh, and he came there as a young 20-year-old, and that they embraced him from the moment that he got there. So much love. They had his back through thick and thin, Big C. Even when he was dancing on opponents' emblems and the logos, and he had a lot of pushback for his teammates. But he had a lot of love for Pittsburgh. He came back. They had his back through thick and thin. His struggles to success, it's hard to leave. And he said he'll see you this fall at Heinz, and they're going crazy. And again, I believe he even had a bicycle when he first got drafted. He didn't drive a car in Pittsburgh, basically. Your thoughts?
Well, it's too crazy to drive in L.A. where he went to college and talk. Them hijackers out there in Los Angeles around USC, so he just stayed on a bicycle.
Yeah, well, they only hijack people who don't lock their cars. Why is it that people can drive around in convertible Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, whatever it is? They got convertibles, and they get out and leave the top down, and then you got people that don't have a convertible. They got every door locked, all the windows are up, and they got this bar on the steering wheel so you can't steal it. Do people not care if their convertibles get stolen, Big C? Your thoughts?
It's called LoJack, Charlton, and if you get in the car, it's going to kill itself automatically.
Okay.
And if you know how to get over the LoJack system, they're going to find you through the tracking system.
Okay, I was just wondering, did someone hijack Juju Smith's car when he was in Southern California? It's all fair, love and war, but I'm sure they'll be happy to have him back there in the beautiful Steel City of Pittsburgh. Big C, the New York Giants, their offense looks scary for this season. I know people say the Giants, they don't look scary at anything. Eli Manning already retired, Big C. But quarterback Daniel Jones, running back Saquon Barkley, wide receiver Kenny Golladay, Big C, and wide receiver Sterling Shepard, wide receiver Darius Slay, wide receiver John Ross III, tight end Evan Ingram, and tight end Kyle Rudolph. And you can't throw the ball to all of them on the same play, but that's a lot of talent offensively, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at a receiving core, Charlton, with the Giants, no, you can't throw the ball to everybody on every play. But Patrick Mahomes scares the hell out of people with whoever he lines up with.
Yeah.
And you know you can't get it to everybody on every play.
Yeah.
But when you look at the talent and depth of that receiving corps that the Giants have put together now in this offseason, they just signed Galladay, I believe, yesterday, that, you know, you have 4 wide receivers that have had 1,000-plus yard seasons in the NFL.
Yeah.
That's an awakening call for any defense, and especially in the NFC East, where we know it's paltry at times.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity for Jones, the quarterback with the Giants. They're trying to figure out their future, so they're putting all the weapons around him that they can. And if Daniel Jones can succeed with this arsenal of weapons that he has, now he got 2 great tight ends in Rudolph and Ingram Charlton, 4 outstanding wide receivers, and if Saquon Barkley comes back healthy, he should have an all-pro year. This should be a breakout year. They should challenge the Washington Redskins for that division. Well, the Washington football team for that division. But Daniel Jones, he should throw for no less than 4,500 yards this year, Charlton, with all those great athletes.
Yeah, guy coming out of Duke, do you think he has – I don't think he's thrown for 4,500 yards in his life, Big C. If he has a lot of talent, and even if he slings the ball around a lot, it's still teams that have a good defense that – I mean, look at Tampa. They won the Super Bowl. Brady threw for 201 yards. They have a lot of offensive weapons in Tampa. Also, they got a lot more offensive in New York with the Giants, Big C. But if they don't have the defense that stop people, it doesn't matter how many great players they have to throw to. But if they stay healthy, I agree, there should not be a better crop in the NFC East, or maybe even in the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, look at Tom Brady. Tom Brady went down to Tampa with the most weapons he ever had in his career on one team. He had the second best year of his professional year, and he had that without a preseason or really a training camp. So you give Daniel Jones the preseason and training camp, Charlton, and you're going to surround him with the best weapons that he's ever had in his life. We've seen this continuously amongst NFL quarterbacks. When you surround them with a wealth of weapons, Charlton, there's no idea how good they can be. I mean, you look at Dak Prescott prior to his injury.
Yeah.
He was having the best year of his professional career, and you look at the receiving corps that Dallas had assembled for him going into last season, Charlton. It was the best that he had ever had in his career.
Yeah.
Even Jimmy Garoppolo out in San Francisco 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl, before everybody started getting hurt, those were the best receivers that he had ever played with.
Yeah.
So, I mean, quarterbacks need weapons to throw the ball to, guys that can get open. Look at your buddy up in Buffalo when they put the receiving corps together for Josh Allen in Buffalo this past season. What did he do? He responded with an all-pro year.
Yep.
So if you give somebody the groceries to cook with,
Yep.
and if they don't burn them, they don't turn the stove up too high, you can have some success.
Yeah. So, and speaking of cooking, they should all get the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger. It comes with exotic meats. It goes great with Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol, and it goes great with the Big C burger. When you barbecue your meat, do you like it seared? Do you like it, medium, well, or is it just off the hoofs is good enough for your Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you have to understand the difference between barbecue and grilling, Charlton. Barbecuing is a long, all-day process. When you're grilling, you're throwing it out there on optimum heat.
Yeah, it's all fair on optimum heat, Big C. Speaking of heat, when you turn up the heat, you gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. The great Kenny Rogers, Big C, sang about that song. The Las Vegas Raiders, head coach Jon Gruden, one of the biggest faces in football, media made, and take a look at the last 6 years of his coaching career thus far. When you think about the great Jon Gruden, Big C, the media loves him. I always think about the fact that Al Davis fired him, and he fired him for a reason. And sometimes kids don't listen to their parents, so the kid may think, I know more than my dad. Why would I listen to my dad? And he's going to try to prove the late Al Davis wrong. But sometimes if you listen to your father, you have a better chance to do things right in life. If you listen, some people don't listen. But with the Oakland, now Las Vegas Raiders, Big C, over the last 3 seasons, Coach Gruden, he's compiled a record of 19 wins and 29 losses. That would have gotten most African-American coaches fired, Big C. Your thoughts?
It would have gotten all African-American coaches fired, Charlton. They'd say the guy just doesn't have control of the organization. He's not a good teacher. He can't create followers, Charlton. And I wonder when Mark Davis is going to come to that conclusion with Jon Gruden. I mean, you can't live on what a guy did talking in a TV booth and saying that that's going to create success, because John Gruden has not had it in his last 6 years of coaching.
Yeah, he hasn't had it in his last 6 years of coaching. So, people talk about it too, and it's all fair. John Gruden, he got $100 million. Why would he not? He said he'd be quit after 3 years if they didn't make the playoffs. Well, he's not a man of his word. But when you do think about will the owner, Mark Davis, will he learn a little bit about what his dad learned? His dad is one of the reasons the NFL became so great. Dad, one of the first men to help integrate the NFL Big C. And I'm wishing the best for everybody. But John Gruden's not treated like black men are treated, Big C. I think he's the only coach in the AFC West that hasn't made the playoffs since he joined them. Anthony Lynn, he's out of the playoffs. He made the playoffs, he's out of the league. And he made the playoffs with the Chargers, Big C, but Gruden's still there. So, should he be on the hot seat? Media-wise, I don't care about media. Media's going to say, well, no, he's my friend. But there was a name brand, and then there was a great NFL head coach, Big C. If you think about him, will he ever be on the hot seat, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, Charlton, I think this year he will be on the hot seat. When you look at the AFC West, that Kansas City's a perennial power. They're going to find a way to rebuild.
Yeah.
You got the upstarts down there with the Chargers. Denver Broncos feel that they're putting together a legacy once again. The Raiders haven't done anything. But when you look at the last 6 years of John Gruden coaching, and he's only about a 40-win percentage, Charlton, in those last 6 years.
Yeah.
3 in Tampa and 3 with the Raiders. And that's keeping him in a job. It's mystifying.
Yeah, it's called white skin privilege, Big C. It's not mystifying at all. It's all fair, number one. And I'm thinking about the great Jack Del Rio, who also played at USC in college. I think he's from Northern California. I think it's Castle Valley, someplace over there, just south of Oakland. He played with the Trojans. He ended up playing for the Saints also. Now he's on the staff with the great Ron Rivera in Washington, Big C. But the great Jack Del Rio, people got to know this. The great Jack Del Rio is the last coach to coach the Raiders in Oakland that time to the playoffs, Big C. Jack spent 3 seasons as a Raiders coach in Oakland, Big C. He combined for a winning record of 25 wins and 23 losses. And they fired the men, and they brought in John Gruden, who, think about it, is 22 wins and 26 losses. I mean, he has more losses than Jack Del Rio had wins, but Jack Del Rio only had 23 losses, and the great John Gruden had 26 losses, and he's able to get $100 million. His winning percentage is 39% since coming back to the Raiders. If you're a baseball batter, that's good. If you hit the ball almost 4 out of every 10 pitches, it's not good as a football coach, especially making $100 million over 10 years. When you're in Vegas and you sit down at that crap table and someone gave you $100 million to play with, when you can't even get to the playoffs, Big C, at what point in time do you walk away from the crap table, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, it shows his ineptitude of coaching, Charlton. When you think about Jack Del Rio, the last Raiders coach to make it to the playoffs. Not only that, Charlton, he had molded Derek Carr into an all-pro quarterback.
That's right.
And Carr's career has been on the slide ever since Del Rio has left that organization. He's never accomplished those feats since Gruden has been there.
That's right.
So you have to look, if you're the owner of the organization, you got to say, okay, what's been wrong the last 3 or 4 years with my team?
Yeah.
Because we made it to the playoffs with the previous administration. We had an all-pro quarterback. We had a solid foundation of players. The general manager was solid.
Yeah.
And now I brought in this guy who begged me for a job and robbed me for $100 million, and I can't win, and I can't find any all-pros.
Yeah, could you imagine the late Al Davidson? Is this the man who wrecked the Raiders again? And the media saying, hey, he's a great coach. He's a coaching genius, because they don't believe in the numbers. I mean, at some point in time, if you're friends at the crap table and he's losing everything you gave him, if you really care about the team, and Al Davis loved the team, I believe, more than he loved himself. At some point in time, they got $1 billion stadium down in Las Vegas, and you got a guy that can't even get to the playoffs. And unfortunately for the Silver and Black, it's become acceptable just to have a guy cussing at people on the sidelines. It's all fair and level more. I want to take you across the country before we close today on the Big C Sports Show. You have the New England Patriots owner, the great Robert Kraft, Big C, on spending in business and his winning. And you think about this. Think about Bob Kraft compared to Mark Davis now. The Patriots owner Robert Kraft, whose team went on a free agent binge that broke the NFL record for the most guaranteed money spent on signings, described the aggressive approach as strategic. It's like investing in the stock market, Kraft said, according to some sources. So the New England Patriots have had their worst season really in the last 20 years. And he's willing to break the bank to get back on the top. The Raiders have spent more money on a coach than any coach in the history of NFL football. And they can't even make the playoffs. Big C, which one is heading in the right direction, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, New England, just because of the structure of the organization, Charlton, is heading in the right direction. Robert Kraft understands, as well as Bill Belichick, we have to win now.
Yeah.
It's not about building for the future. If you look at the history of that New England organization, they've never built through the draft. I mean, they haven't drafted an all-pro offensive player in the skill position, in the first round since Belichick has been there. So you think about that. Over 20 years, they have never invested in an all-pro skill position player in the first round. They have put their money on defense and in their linemen, Charlton, and they went out in free agency and bolstered all of those positions, as well as tight end. So this is a team that's prepared to go out and challenge the Buffalo Bills once again for that division. They leapfrogged the Miami Dolphins here in the offseason because they should be better at quarterback.
Yeah.
But they're about winning now. They're not accustomed to saying, okay, 2 to 3 years down the road, we'll try to get into the playoffs in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They always had the mentality, we'll be there next year.
Yeah. You think that Mark Davis could have listened to his father just a little bit more before you lose $100 million. It's hard to get that kind of money back. It's all fair and level war. Last story, women's basketball, according to men's basketball, is not treated the same. We know that. We have number 1 seed Stanford, UConn, and South Carolina. They rolled to easy victory Sunday, Big C. The first day of the women's basketball tournament, the first round concludes today, Big C. But just some things that happened down the Alamo Dome. And when you think about what's going on, Iowa, number 5, Iowa 87-72 over Central Michigan, the number 12 seed. Number 7, Virginia Tech 70. Number 10, Marquette 63. Number 8, Oklahoma State 84. Number 9, Wake Forest 61. Kentucky 71, Idaho State 63. But I want to I know we have a lot of scores out there, and I want to run down all the scores. It was number 1, North Carolina State 79, number 16, North Carolina A&T 58, and number 2, Baylor 101, number 15, Jackson State 52. Women are doing their thing, Big C. They're trying to get the same type of attention that men get. It's probably not going to happen. Number 8, Oregon State 83, Florida State 59. And just give me your feeling on what women can do to get more publicity the way we give them to close out our show, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's almost impossible to get the women the type of attention that the men get, Charlton, when it's not as marketable or not the same amount of investment is not put forth. When you think about the women's programs, Charlton, and they only get about an eighth of the money that the men's programs do for March Madness. Not only that, you got the women's programs going up against 2 leagues, Charlton. You got the men's playing as well as you have the NBA playing.
Yeah.
So it's almost everything against the women is out there when it comes to a broadcast perspective in trying to get people to follow their game against the overwhelming number of men's games that are being played.
Very well said. I wanted to just close out our show giving some attention, paying homage to the women of the NCAA basketball universe. It's all fair and level war. Big C, Pac-12 doing their thing. In March Madness, looking for that one shiny moment. Back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, he would say, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, it's a sad day in the sports universe, and I want to pay my condolences to the Lakers family, Charlton, and the great late Elgin Baylor, who passed away today at the age of 46. Elgin Baylor was one of the greatest NBA forwards of all time, Charlton. He spent his entire career with the Los Angeles Lakers. He's only one of 4 players in NBA history to average a double-double throughout his career in points, in over 25 points a game and over 10 rebounds a game, Charlton. Wilt Chamberlain was one of the others, as well as Karl Malone and Bob Pettit. So when you think about the legacy of Elgin Baylor, who had ran the Los Angeles Clippers, Charlton, just a class gentleman throughout his life and his career in the NBA. And I want to send my thoughts and prayers to his family. And once again, I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, doctors, first responders. They take care of everyone, regardless of their status in life.
They take care of everyone, and we do appreciate everything that they do. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. As my mom always says, there's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.